Hey guys, Jenna here. Welcome to my channel where I take you on tours of tiny and unique homes. In today's video, we're going to meet one woman who built her own tiny log cabin. She lived in this tiny home for a few years and then expanded her family and added on a few additions. She's going to take us on a full tour of her beautiful log cabin and also talk about how she's now teaching these skills to others. If you like these kind of videos, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so that you get a notification every time I post a new video. But right now, let's meet Natalie and take a tour of her beautiful log cabin.
I'm Natalie Bogwalker with Wild Abundance, and I'm so excited to get to share my tiny house log cabin. I've been living in this cabin for about 8 years. I would say I finished it about 6 years ago. The original build is a round log cabin. So building with round logs is pretty challenging, and especially when you get into round meets square. The original build of the log cabin was under $5,000, which was pretty epic for a 12 by 16 space, 2 stories. And that's because the logs came mostly from this land and because I salvaged or bought from salvage sources all the windows and doors. I feel really great about, the space being under 400 square feet when it was just me. And then now with 3 of us, it's just under 700 square feet with the additions. And that feels awesome. I run Wild Abundance, which is a school for building. We do a lot of women's carpentry classes. We do tiny house classes. So it's largely based on this land and on the internet. My way of making my living is very integrated into my lifestyle. This home kind of maintains the lifestyle that's very centered in earth-based living. This beautiful natural space that I've built myself really resonates with me with the way that I like to live, which is basically having a handmade life. This is the original part of the cabin. So the original build was 12 feet by 16 feet. We had to stack all of the logs and put on the roof and then wait for the whole thing to settle before we cut out the doors and the windows. That original 12 by 16 cabin was home for yours truly and not a whole family. So we'll be seeing additions that have been made to the cabin since then. As you walk in the door, you're straight to the kitchen, and that's really important because for me, that's where I spend a lot of time in the house. I have this counter right inside the door. It takes stuff that I need to set down right away, and then you walk in. I've got my stove. This is a sink that I crafted with my friend Baron Brown. It's made out of soapstone that I went up to Virginia. There's a soapstone mine and bought there. I carved in with a file these drainage points, which it's amazing. When you put water on the sink, it just drains right down. You don't end up with wet counters for long, which is fabulous. This windowsill is also soapstone, and this is south facing. So when there's not leaves on the trees, then the sun, which is in the winter time, it's amazing how that happens for passive solar, that when there aren't leaves on the trees is when you want to have that solar gain, that sunlight coming into your house. The sun comes in, it hits this windowsill, it hits the sink, and it heats them up, and then it releases that heat into the room. This wood stove, which this is actually a wood cook stove that we have installed relatively recently. It's a Baker's Choice. It's a fabulous wood cook stove. It has a nice big firebox, and it also has a really nice sized oven to be able to cook things in. When this is really roaring in the wintertime, that also heats up the soapstone, and then that heat is slowly released even if the fire goes out from the wood stove. There's another cool thing with this wood stove is it has, you can see these copper pipes that go into the wood stove, and in the firebox there's a coil And when there's a fire going, the water is going through that coil, and that fire heats up the water, and it causes a thermosiphon with a tank that's upstairs. And so the hot water goes up into the tank, and the cooler water comes back down to be heated back up. And in the wintertime, that's what makes hot water come out of the sink and out of the bathtub. So it's pretty fabulous. Some other details that I want to mention about the kitchen is these cabinets we made from scratch. They are spruce and local black walnut. I made them without any use of plywood. When I was building this first part of the cabin, I was incredibly purist, and so there was no plywood involved. And that is a pain in the butt. I would not suggest doing that. Plywood has a purpose. It does not move. Anyway, so building cabinets without plywood, crazy, but I did it. And then we have these antler poles, which are really nice. So those are the cabinets. And then this is the jar storage. And when I designed this jar storage, I designed it so that pint jars could fit perfectly on the top shelf, quart jars perfectly on the second and the third shelf, and then half gallon and gallon jars can fit perfectly on the bottom shelf. And then up here I have my spices. We have soapstone, which is great for putting hot things on. And then this is my butcher block, which I really like to have just in place. Welcome upstairs. This is my office, and this is a desk that I made with cherry and with spruce. And so I used this kind of distressed cherry for the drawer pulls, and I'm just really stoked about how they've all turned out. And then this is a special spot for my printer. This is slate. It's actually old slate roofing that I used as wall paneling, and in the wintertime, light shines in and hits the slate and radiates that heat back into the room. And it's pretty dramatic. Like when you put your hand on here in the wintertime, it's super warm. And in the summertime, the sun is blocked from coming in that window by this little roof eave, so it doesn't heat up. Here I have a bunch of stuff. Like it's kind of a display altar of my past life as a primitive skills practitioner, which I occasionally still dabble in, but these objects are really special and really important to me. So I like to have a place to put them, but also in a tiny house, that space to put them needs to be compact, and so it is above the desk. And then I have this bookshelf, and it's a similar concept to the jars that we saw earlier, where there's little books, medium-sized books, and then big books go on the bottom shelf. And as we come around, this cabin is a clerestory design, the way that this roof is. And when I was building it, this part was actually going to be open when I first drew it. But then at some point I realized that I just couldn't fit everything that I wanted to fit. Like I wanted to have this really generous desk office area. And so in order to do that, I needed to jack up the roof so that I could fit my bed in here. I have enough room so that I can comfortably sit up in bed. And it really feels so cozy and lovely to be just in this little space sleeping. And I chose to put tulip poplar bark I harvested, and I used that for paneling on the ceiling. And here we have the hot water heater, and so that is not getting electrical to it, it's getting water from the wood cook stove during the winter time and anytime it's cool. And so that water is just cycling through, and it's important that the storage tank is upstairs or just higher than the wood stove. And you can see I've left my stovepipe here bare, because that way when I'm having a fire downstairs, that heat can radiate all the way up here to where when you touch the pipe up high, it is cool to the touch. Going through the stairs though, of course, I had to use insulated pipe. So this has been the original cabin, which worked awesomely for one person and could work for two people, but when you add on having a baby, then the 12 by 16 cabin living under 400 square feet becomes a little challenging. So first we'll go check out my daughter's room. I designed this room with the idea of it being a naturally inspired, magical place for a small child. We have this bear that myself and two other friends sculpted in the wall, and those mimic another bear that you'll see a little later on in the tour. This wall, I used a technique that is like traditional plaster on wooden lath. And so that has regular insulation in it. Well, it's wool insulation, and then it has lath, and then it's lime plaster on top. This part, before it was an addition, it was a covered porch. We closed in this room and the other room, which we call the addition. This other room, the other addition, was actually done before this room. And so this is old live edge lapped siding, which then we sanded because it became interior. Then my partner Frank built Hazel, our daughter, this fun playhouse up in her room. She likes to climb up it and then jump off of it into the bed. This is the room that I made to be the nest for giving birth to my daughter. And so this originally, like the other room, was part of a covered porch, and the original timber frame is here. We did this building technique called slip straw, which is a natural building technique. It's also called light slip straw. And the way that you do it is you use plywood forms and you take straw and you cover it with a thin clay slip, and then you pack it lightly into these forms, and then you plaster over that. And this has been plastered and it has a lease. And this is this beautiful sculpture, and this is when I was pregnant and my friend Beatrice was pregnant, and it's Mama Bear with her baby bear eating berries. She did this. She's an amazing artist. She actually passed of cancer, but before she did, she left this beautiful gift for our family. This is the bear that's then reflected in Hazel's room, and this one was done first. And so this was my nest for having my daughter. And then here we have our bathtub, and I do not understand, aside from ease of having plumbing in one place, why you would ever want to have a bathtub next to a toilet, because it's so nice to just luxuriate in the bathtub and basically be like in a bedroom or in a living room. And so here we have the bathtub featured inside of the room. We've created this like tile corral for it. I do like to keep the toilet out of the house, so I have an outhouse, and I just really like keeping that function away from all the rest of my cozy life. And another thing about this room is that it has these lovely niches, which you can, with this straw to clay technique and with a lot of natural building techniques, you can do a lot of sculptural work. And so we have this lovely niche that makes a really lovely altar. Something that I want to highlight about this room, aside from the gorgeous timber frame, which is all from wood on this land, there's also just some really fun detail work with the trim. So this is some black walnut that I really like, kind of this Asian influence, how I did this trim. And I actually put this trim up, I think it was 10 days before I gave birth, which was pretty crazy. This has been a vision since I originally made my 16 by 20 cabin. And that's something that I think is really important for tiny house builders, is that you think in terms of expansion. And so this set of French doors leads now to this deck. This vision is slowly coming to fruition. So we have this lovely place for outdoor eating. And then I really love gardening, and so having a greenhouse that is really accessible to the cabin is super important. I've been really digging this deck. This is our back porch, and I'm a big believer in outdoor living. I do not want to be sleeping inside when it's stuffy and it's so beautiful outside. And out here I can hear the sounds of the frogs, I can like be breathing fresh air, I can just be part of nature, which is how I want to be. And so in the wintertime I sleep inside, and this is our outdoor bed. We have very few biting insects, and so occasionally we'll put up a mosquito net, but for now we're just sleeping out. It's so much cheaper to build spaces that are not insulated, and it really enhances your quality of life. And so I highly recommend building lots of outdoor spaces and making the outdoor spaces be in some ways bigger and more spacious and even more lovely than your indoor spaces. I plan to stay in this house like forever is my plan. Living in a space that I built, it was a lot of work to build it and a lot of work to add on to it, and really truly a labor of love. And so I'm planning on milking that work as long as I possibly can.
Thanks for watching this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you soon with another tiny or unique home tour.